I rise to speak as His Majesty's official opposition in support of the Rare Cancers Bill and to welcome its thoughtful and necessary intervention on behalf of a group of patients who are often under-researched, underrepresented and under-acknowledged for too long. I'd also like to commend the Honourable Member for Edinburgh South West for bringing this bill forward and his ongoing dedication and pursuit of this issue. The case for the bill is clear. Rare cancers, defined in line with the UK Rare Disease Framework, are conditions affecting fewer than 1 in 2,000 people. Are individually uncommon, but collectively they account for more than 20% of all cancer diagnoses. And yet, as we know, patients with rare cancers routinely face delayed diagnosis, limited treatment options, and far fewer opportunities to participate in clinical research. This bill does not claim to be a silver bullet, but it does mark a significant step forward in how we think about and legislate for research, regulation, and data access in rare cancer care. It is focused, proportionate, and strategically aligned with the existing NHS and NIHR frameworks. So if we turn to the bill itself, Clause 1 places a duty on the Secretary of State to carry out a review of the law relating to marketing authorisations for orphan medicinal products that are for diagnosis, prevention, or treatment of cancer. It also rightly requires that this review includes comparisons with regulatory approaches in other countries. This is vital. The explanatory notes rightly observe that research into rare cancers is often commercially unattractive because of small patient populations and high developmental costs. If our regulatory environment creates further barriers to entry, then patients suffer, not because the science doesn't exist, because the system doesn't support it. The UK's current approach to orphan designation lacks the pre-authorisation incentives found in systems like the EMA and the FDA. This review is the opportunity to ask, are we doing enough to attract the research and development that rare cancer patients deserve? Clause 2 makes a crucial change to the Secretary of State's duty on... I will give way.
I'm not quite sure whether he's responding to the amendments or whether he's in a sense making a third reading speech, but I hope that he will be able to address the amendments which I moved, including the amendments in relation to Clause 1 about which he's just been speaking.
I'm very grateful for the member of Christchurch for his intervention, and if he will wait with me and bear with me, I will turn directly to his specific amendments. I think it's important to those set the context because at report stage we have the clauses placed in front of us that we must understand first if we're to debate the amendments that come in afterwards. So if he will wait just a few moments, I will be with him shortly. Clause 2 makes it crucial changes to the Secretary of State's duty under the NHS Act 2006 by stating explicitly that it must include research into cancers that, in the opinion of the Secretary of State, are rare cancers. While this matters, the research agenda is often driven by numbers and funding scale. By mandating that rare cancers be part of the agenda, the bill begins to shift the culture towards inclusion, equity, and long-term thinking. I particularly welcome the creation of the National Speciality Lead for Rare Cancers, modelling on the NIHR's existing structure of research delivery leaders. This individual will be tasked with promoting and facilitating research, advising on trials and designs, and convening collaboration. And the success of this role will depend on it being able to support it not just in symbolic nature, but with a clear remit, adequate funding, and a strategic alignment with the wider NIHR Research Delivery Network. Now, Clause 3 amends Section 261 of the Health and Social Care Act 2012 to allow NHS England to disclose information from cancer registries for the purpose of identifying and contacting potential clinical trial participants. This is a significant and necessary step. The bill distinguishes between a disease registry, like the National Disease Registration Service, and a contact registry, such as Be Part of Research. Making sure these systems can speak to each other will be significant benefit in how patients match with opportunities. And importantly, the bill reaffirms that any such data sharing must remain compliant with the Data Protection Act 2018. As subsection 6A makes clear, a power conferred by this section to process information does not authorise the processing of information which would contravene the data protection legislation. This is a safeguard we must preserve, not weaken, if we are to maintain public trust in the system. At this point, I'd now like to turn to the amendments tabled by the Honourable Member for Christchurch. He approaches private members' bills in the way a jeweller examines diamonds, with a magnifying glass, a steady hand, and absolutely no tolerance for flaws. We may grumble as the clock ticks on, but deep down, we all sleep better knowing he's reading the footnotes. This bill is no different. He has approached this legislation with rigour, and I thank him for his commitment to improving clarity, accountability, and precision. And he pointed out this bill is not trivial, and therefore it is not only right, but indeed the duty of this House to scrutinise closely bills and amendments that are laid before us. To that end, several of these amendments aim to tighten the bill's drafting or introduce firmer deadlines. For example, Amendment 4 would reduce the time frame for Clause 1 review from 3 years to 2. Amendment 2 would require the Secretary of State to set out a timetable for implementing any changes in the law recommended by the review. While I understand the concerns that the reviews can drift, the current 3-year period does reflect the complexity of the subject. This is a UK-wide review of the Human Medicines Regulation 2012, including benchmarking against other jurisdictions and engagements of multiple agencies. Compressing that timeline may actually jeopardise the depth or quality of the analysis. Likewise, a statutory timetable for implementing could constrain the government prematurely before the review's conclusions are even known. Of course.
I'm very grateful, and I'm very grateful to the impromptu comments that my honourable friend has made. But dealing with that point, he will know that there's only funding. It is said that there's funding sufficient to start this for 1 year. If there's only funding for 1 year, why does it take 3 years?
Dr. Luke Evans.
Well, he will also not look at, he will know this far better than I, not to look at legislation in isolation. When the cancer plan is being brought forward at some point by the government, there's going to be a direct crossover between these two pieces of legislation, Madam Deputy Speaker. So I think it is right to give the government that freedom to be able to have that space to implement it, because if we rush it, there is a problem we could get this wrong, which is even more detrimental for those who suffer with the rare cancers. Now, other amendments address definitions and discretion. For example, Amendment 5 removes in the opinion of the Secretary of State from the definition of rare cancer, and Amendment 8 removes similar wording relating to the NHS England's discretion. At first glance, these may seem like matters of tidy drafting, but retaining that discretion, I believe, is important, especially in rare cancers. Prevalence data can be uncertain or lagging. Flexibility allows for expert judgments for those edge cases where rigid definitions from unintentionally excluded patients from trials or research that could actually benefit from them. Top that with the concerns about the simple definition. We're still exploring the difference between, for example, precancerous and cancerous cells. If you go for a smear, that's what you're told. This is a new area that we're looking at. Who knows what will come up in the future, and simply defining it on lagging prevalence data is a risk. And therefore, I believe it's right that the government and indeed the Secretary of State at the time would be able to direct one way or another and have that discretion. However, there is a rightly posed question that I would be grateful for the government to answer on who or what will fill the role when it comes to the abolition of NHS England. It isn't clear exactly what that would look like. This is a question I know the Minister sat opposite me has heard me repeat to him several times when it comes to the mental health bill and many other areas. And it is a question this House should rightly ask: who is responsible for what, when and why? That said, Amendment 7, with the proposed national speciality lead to be appointed within 6 months of royal assent, does deserve serious considerations. Patients have waited long enough. If the government is confident this post can be established promptly and resourced effectively, then I would welcome that the ambition being stated today could be stated directly at the dispatch box. Finally, I must express concern about Amendment 9, which proposes to remove the data protection safeguard of Clause 3, subsection 4. While this provision may be declaratory in reaffirming existing legal obligations, it nonetheless offers clarity and reassurance. In an area as sensitive as health data, this clarity matters. Its removal could cause unnecessary concern, even if the underlying law remains unchanged. So in conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, this bill is not grandstanding. It is modest in financial cost, careful in its drafting, and realistic in its scope. But its impact could be significant. For patients living with rare cancer and clinicians and researchers striving to support them, the bill offers real hope. Hope for faster access to innovation, hope for more inclusive research, and hope for a regulatory system that works for the many, not just the majority. Every patient matters, whether they are 1 in 2 or 1 in 2,000. As stated at second reading and in the committee bill, the Bill Committee, we support this bill as it goes forward. And I thank the Chamber today for that chance to approve it.